Hi, folks. Thomas Henson here with another episode of Big Data, Big Questions. And so today we are continuing our career series. Loving these. Today we've got a special guest, Joe Abraham. And Joe is a network security consultant working in the public sector space, helping customers do all kinds of cool things in security and networking. He's also a Pluralsight author. He's got 10 courses, and he's also helping in part of the learning path for the Splunk Fundamentals. And so that's how I met Joe. And I thought, hey, it'd be great to have him on here to talk about cybersecurity engineering. So we're going to learn a lot today. We're going to talk about some tips, kind of, how data is used in cybersecurity, but also, what are some of the ways that you can get into this booming industry? And, make sure you stay towards the end. And he's going to talk about and answer the question of, is cybersecurity still something where there's a huge shortage and a lot of jobs available? I think you'll know and can take a hint of where that's probably going, but it was really interesting to have his take on that. So without further ado, let's jump in to Big Data, Big Questions, Career Deep Dives. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining Big Data, Big Questions. We have another amazing interview today. So Joe Abraham, how about you say hi to the Big Data, Big Questions audience?
Hey, everyone. How's it going? Hope you're doing well.
So Joe, let's jump right into it. I know you as a Pluralsight author. I know a lot of the folks out there watching have probably seen some of your courses, but tell me, what specifically do you do right now? What's your day to day, and tell us about some of the courses and things you're doing at Pluralsight.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So, my day job, I'm a security consulting engineer. So I go help customers implement their cybersecurity solutions, visibility solutions, that kind of stuff. And then my side hustle or my side gig is Pluralsight, right? So I'm a course author with Pluralsight, and I create Splunk courses, I create cybersecurity courses, machine data type courses. So I'm really passionate about that side of the industry. So.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I definitely want to dig into some of the questions, especially with your background and cybersecurity around, what we're doing with Splunk. But before we jump into it, I want to know a little bit more about you, and the audience does too. So, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into cybersecurity and Splunk and all the machine intelligence and data there?
Yeah, no. So, I started off in the Army, actually. I was a SATCOM operator in the Army, and, I loved the SATCOM and the analog signal world, but networking and security, as soon as I saw that kind of stuff, I was drawn to it. So I kind of pushed myself over to the routing and switching and security domains of that. My last couple of years in the Army, I started digging really deep into there. I got my CISSP and my CCNP. So, I was pretty faceted in both worlds, right? And even after getting out of the military, I kind of straddled the line between routing and switching and security. So I feel like that actually gave me, good skill sets to use, transitioning over to cybersecurity as well. And then, as soon as I joined my current employer, Cisco, I just made the huge push into all security all the time, and I've been loving it ever since.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I know you and I have talked about it a little bit before we kicked off this recording today. And for viewers may know, but my background a little bit is in cybersecurity. So I was actually a defense contractor. So that's how I got into. I did some projects for Department of Defense, and so for some reason they were like, "Hey, you're gonna have to start doing some security stuff too." And I didn't really understand it as a developer, but so it's interesting how that path. And I think there's some other folks that I've talked to before too. A lot of people in industry have some kind of background, in the financial world or within Department of Defense. So I mean, talk about it. So, tell me more about that. Why do you think that, for financial and, government, why is security a top notch or kind of something that they focus on, and we tend to see more folks from that area?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's because security is almost built into you when you're in those industries or those fields. So, speaking about the Department of Defense and the Army, everything's about security there. So I learned the basics of, physical access controls and, all of the other logical access controls because we had to live it day in and day out, right? So I feel like that's why a lot of people from those industries are drawn to it, and the financial sector as well. We have, PCI compliance and all of these other regulations that the financial world has to I don't want to use the word deal with, but they have to consider, right?
You can say it.
So these organizations or these entities that are living and breathing security day in and day out, it's almost natural, seemingly, for them to venture towards cybersecurity. So
Yeah, I know, and I know, as a developer, and one thing, I've kind of I talk to folks about is, even as a developer, a lot of times that, for building that security, it's kind of always a joke for us, like, oh, we'll do security later, but it really does, it really does cost more if you have to go back and do it. So, but kind of keeping there with the cybersecurity, engineer. So, what would you tell somebody who's, hey, we're just starting out, I'm looking to get into cybersecurity. I don't have any background in it, or maybe it's somebody that's in high school or in college about to graduate. What should they do today to start to build their resume and start to work their way towards being in the security industry?
okay, I would say don't be intimidated. The cybersecurity field is huge, and there's so many different specialties in it that you can get lost just trying to figure out what you want to do in there. Take internships if you can. Build your own home labs if possible. Just do anything that you can to start getting exposure to the cybersecurity industry, or just to basic IT, in general. So you can start learning about the concepts and start building up your skill sets.
Are there any 1 to 2 areas that you would say focus on? And I know it's like data analytics. There's so many different areas you can go, right? Like you can be the data scientist, you can be the data engineer, you can work in Spark. But what are some common areas or common technologies that you would say, hey, maybe get hands on with these specific things?
I would start with some sort of SIM or SOAR. Obviously Splunk or Kibana and the Elk Stack those are both two of the main ones in the industry, right? And then besides that, start looking at whatever open source security tools you can, or if you do have, vendor provided security tools, those are great to learn on as well. But open source is free. We all love free. And spinning up a Linux virtual machine is not too difficult to do. So just start playing around with the technology and figuring out what logs you can look at and how authentications work and stuff like that.
No, I think that's I love the idea there. So both Joe and I have Pluralsight courses in Splunk, but when I did the switch over where we were starting to do data analytics in a securities perspective, we did start with the Elk Stack there, and so that was kind of my basis. Is hey, it was we're trying to save the government money, right? Like it was it was one of those things where hey, what are the things that we can do from the open source perspective? So I like that. So it's just like we talk about with data analytics, right? Like getting hands on. So
definitely.
I think that's an important piece. So let's talk a little bit more around Splunk and data analytics. So why does data analytics kind of what's the relationship between data analytics specifically and cybersecurity? Like why is there kind of a crossover there?
Man, I feel like data drives everything we do nowadays.
I like to hear that.
Yeah, it definitely does. So you're good for a long time. And yeah, so without that data, we can't do our jobs as cybersecurity professionals. We can't detect threats. We can't respond to them because we wouldn't have known what happened, right? But the other side of that too, which is where the data engineers have, some issues, is we have to get the data in the right way, not just flooding, the analysts and the other professionals with just log after log, right? So it's so super important, and I think that's where the data analytics come into play, because that's how cybersecurity professionals do our jobs, essentially.
Yeah. And so how does, from Splunk's perspective, why is it so popular? Why is it so popular for security professionals? And, in the role that I do for my job, I talk to a lot of folks around data analytics, and Splunk is one of the workloads that I do. And a lot of times it has started in the security area, and then more use cases come out, right? Like they do so many other things than just security, but it's like, hey, they have modules for manufacturing, IoT, retail, the machine learning toolkit. Now, they've got a deep learning toolkit now too. But why is it so large in the security perspective, and start typically there?
That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer, but I can speculate. We could speculate all day. It's easy to use. They make it user friendly. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to hack it to be able to use it, right? in the App Store or the Splunk base, that you can download all these different apps and add-ons to help you ingest your data better. So I don't know, maybe it's just the ease of use. That's what I personally like about it. It's easy to spin up. It's easy to get started with. They have universal forwarders, so you don't even have to, start messing with your own forwarders if you don't want to. And yeah, I don't know. They're the biggest player in the SIM industry, as far as I'm aware of. So.
Yeah, and I like to tell folks too, from an analytics perspective, having started in Hadoop and in that world, and then some of the things that we were doing with our application was similar to what Splunk could do, but the thing that I think that Hadoop kind of missed the boat on, and it's not really a fair comparison, but it's the fact that with Splunk, what you could do is, if I told people, if you can power up Excel, you can start using Splunk. I mean, it's that simple,
Yeah.
right? Like you can just pull it in, start making your own dashboard, start making your own charts and everything off the data that you have. And so there was that visualization. It's like, for me, Splunk put the visualization first and said, hey, we'll worry about what happens on the back end, but you can start mixing and matching and I mean, essentially becoming your own data analyst with your tools there. And so that's why I think that they have been so popular, is that they said, hey, we'll handle all the data and abstract that away. You start, using your charts and pulling in and, making these dashboards for executives or anybody around. So
Yep, definitely. Yeah, it's so easy to use, and if you have no experience at all, you can look at the documentation library in Splunk, and step by step, this is how you configure it on a Linux box or a Windows box and start getting data in. So they make it so user friendly.
Yeah, and I like the Splunk store, right? The Splunk base.
Oh yeah.
And that's being able to we have some of our own projects there, but just being able to go and say, hey, you want to pull something in and be able to use it. I mean, it's just like WordPress. I don't know if you've ever used WordPress for websites, but it's like, man, you can go crazy with all the widgets. You have to be careful with it, but I think
Oh yeah, definitely.
there. So let me ask, so what are some of the biggest challenges you see? So somebody's watching this, they're in cybersecurity, but what are some of the biggest challenges facing the industry today?
I would say one challenge is having too much data. So I alluded to that a little bit earlier. We have to filter and make sure that we have the right data coming in. Another challenge that I see is that a lot of times we have all these tools. We have firewalls and IPSs and behavior analysis tools and all of these different security products, and we don't know how to use them to their fullest capabilities most of the time. And then another challenge, I think, is skill sets. So the cyber industry is huge, right? I mean, you know it as much as well as I do. And it seems like there's almost new specialties within cybersecurity popping up daily. How do we keep up with that? How do we maintain our knowledge and grow into these new specialties and these new fields? So I think that's a huge struggle as well.
All right, so I feel like that's a good point there. I love when you're talking about how the different tools, because we, as anybody in IT or development, we always, hey, the best tool is the one you're not using. It's the newest framework that's shiny and we all want to use, right? But like you were saying, make sure you're getting more than just 25% of that tool.
Right.
But kind of looking at cybersecurity industry and some of the things that I've seen coming out of Splunk and even with Elasticsearch and the Elk stack. Where does cloud play into security professionals and kind of their approach? Like, how is that changing, that skill set and really where their focus is?
It's creating an entirely new field for them. I'll be honest. I work mostly on-prem, so I don't know enough about the cloud to even talk intelligently about it. But it's creating a new field, and what's really difficult is, while it's creating a new field, we're also blending that with all of the on-prem appliances. So how do we look into both environments and the path in the middle to try to find security threats and stuff like that? So
yeah, and so many applications now are looking for hybrid. So I work I work with a lot of data analytics companies, and they want to be able to run things on prem, but then push it out to the cloud or burst it out to the cloud for different things. And that hybrid cloud or even multi-cloud approach, which I know a lot of folks in the cloud industry are like, oh, I don't know, there's no such thing, but there's so many different applications in one. You'll be surprised that if you go into a customer, they're using not only AWS, they have stuff on prem, Azure, maybe even GCP, because there's so many. I mean, there's over 500, I think over 500 services, I think, just for around analytics between them. So it's definitely making challenges, but I think it's making things a little bit better, right? From as we look at what's going on with the cloud native apps and Kubernetes, the ability to run your applications and port and have those running anywhere within your infrastructure, but even in the cloud too. So you talked a little bit about certifications. This is one question I think every IT professional gets either way. So do you have to have a certification or no certifications?
That's a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
That's a very loaded question. So,
and people are going to be mad no matter what you say.
I know, right? I know. So I'm going to take the middle ground and say it depends.
Yeah.
But let me explain both sides of the story, right? So on one hand, we have, yes, certifications are great. They're important. They showcase your abilities, right? They prove to your hiring manager or whatever organizations you're trying to get into that you have a certain level of these skill sets, right? Which is great. But then on the other hand, a lot of times the certifications that we have might not match up to requisitions, and those requisitions might not actually match up to certain jobs that are available in the organizations. So that's actually another problem, with the cybersecurity field right now. But on the certification front, I think that having the certifications is great as long as you're getting them with the right knowledge. Sorry, not getting them with the right knowledge. As long as you're getting them with the intention to learn the product or the technology or the solution effectively and use that to help the organization, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. What you're saying is it's not testing your ability to pass a test.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Don't just pass it to get the credential. Pass it to learn the technology and learn the solution.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it can be very beneficial. On the flip side, though, not having a certification, I know plenty of people that are super smart, way smarter than me, way better at their jobs, and they don't have any certifications. They just are the type of people that maybe they don't care about certifications or they don't want to take the time to study it, but they know this product inside and out like the back of their hand, and they can solve any problem with it. So those kind of people, they might have a little bit more trouble getting their foot in the door in an organization or getting a job that they want. But I feel like once they start talking about the product, you'll know instantly if they have the knowledge or not. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and that's typically, the way that I approach it when folks ask me too, is it depends. I will say though, just from my perspective and, being around, not specifically I was in cybersecurity, but being around and seeing, job requisitions and having to help when I was on the government or when I was on the defense contractor side. There are I would say in security, I've seen it more as a baseline that sometimes you do have to have that piece of paper just to say, hey, I'm network plus so that I can access this system. And I've even seen them need it for certain projects for developers. So, there was a couple of times where it was like, hey, you may have to have it, but I see what you're saying. Like, I totally agree. Like, some of it, I thought you were going to go harder on it just because having the CISSP, man, I've heard so many horror stories around that and how long that one takes. Tell us a little bit. I'm kind of curious now. Do you have a horror story like I've heard many other folks, or was it was that hard just to kind of get through?
No, it was that hard. And I swear, I second guessed almost every single question that was on the exam. I second guessed every answer that I had. It's the kind of test that just makes you go crazy inside. I don't know why. But I got out of that, and that was one of the worst certification exams I've ever taken from a difficulty standpoint.
Wow.
And I had a lot of experience in security at the time, and I even took a college level course and that used the CISSP official certification guide as the textbook for it. And I struggled with that test. It made me second guess everything that I did. I told my wife after I took it, That test made me second guess every single life decision even that I ever made.
Yeah. Why am I in
So,
security?
yep, exactly. Yeah, so it was extremely difficult, but definitely worth it in the long run. That's one of the certifications that I'm definitely maintaining. And yeah, it's a great one to have. It really helps tie together the business and the technical aspects of everything that you're doing. So.
Yeah. So cybersecurity always changing, just like IT and development. What are some of the things that you do to keep up and keep your skills and continue learning? Right.
Yeah, that's tough. We're all so busy. It's really hard to find time to study for new things, let alone stay active with your current technologies and stuff like that. So I try to push myself to set goals and actually execute on those. Um, I'm challenged every day at work. I'm trying to take difficult projects as much as I can, or if I'm stepping into a new role, try to take on a more difficult role than I'm currently in to push myself. And then Pluralsight, my Pluralsight courses, they force me to learn everything that I'm doing much better than I would otherwise, right? I feel like teaching somebody something, you kind of have to break it all down to the basics of what you're teaching, and kind of build it up from there. So it forces me to dig in. Oh, hey, this is how Splunk handles threat intelligence, for example.
Yeah.
We need to understand this to be able to teach them the right way. So.
No, I totally agree. It makes you maybe not as bad as your CISSP, but having to listen to yourself teach something makes you second guess every decision you've ever made sometimes.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I'm actually scared to go back and look at some of my oldest courses just to hear my own voice, and my audio probably wasn't the best back then because I was using a headphone mic, and yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, yeah. My first one 5 years ago, I'll go back and listen to it every once in a while, and it's like, man, you feel like you've come so far, but it's like you can like I don't know, and maybe it doesn't always come off to the students and the folks that are listening, but you can tell on your own, like, hey, listen how nervous he is,
Right. Yeah,
'cause-
definitely. Yeah. Oh, it's rough.
So next 2 to 5 years, got a couple more questions, but the next 2 to 5 years, what's going on in security? What are some of the trends that you're looking for, and what would you recommend folks kind of being on the lookout for?
So I'm seeing a lot more integrations coming over the years. Our products are starting. I feel like over the past couple of years, we've been doing a really good job integrating all of our security products together, right? In the next two to five, I see that happening. Maybe even better than what we have now, hopefully, right? So integrations are one thing, and then using intelligence and your data effectively and efficiently, I think, we'll start bridging that gap a little bit more. As we start filling, more cybersecurity roles, and as organizations start using their technologies a little bit better, I feel like that we're going to have better intelligence, and especially with all of the threat intelligence clouds and feeds that we can download, I think that is just adding to our abilities to be more effective. So yeah, integrations and using intelligence better.
So you said as we start filling some more of those roles. So I know in the past there's been a shortage. Are we still short of cybersecurity professionals? Is there still a huge need and gap there?
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, I don't even know what the current number is, based on all the analysis that happens.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely a shortage for roles themselves and specific skill sets too. So
Okay, so booming field still. You still see it that way in the next 2 to 5 years. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
I don't see it changing. Even with automation, I don't see that stuff changing, because we still need people to look at the stuff and evaluate to make sure that it's actually malicious or not, right? So
Yeah, so a human still in the loop, kind of making the decisions, even with machine learning and AI. Cool.
yeah.
So wrapping up here, folks want to reach out to you. How can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
So I use at Joabrah, Joeabrah, as my handle for Twitter. I should actually change my LinkedIn one, but you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I do have a blog and a website that I'm actually in the middle of revamping. So hopefully my goal is to launch that at the beginning of the year, with some new content and everything like that. It's called Defend the Net. So www.defendthenet.com. And then my YouTube channel as well. Yeah, I'm small potatoes compared to you, Thomas. But I have a whole bunch of YouTube videos that I've started to create, and I'm queuing them up so I can start actually launching videos. Right now, it's just my Pluralsight course trailers that are there. But another thing for the beginning of the year, I should be launching that as well with at least a couple videos to start with. And then Pluralsight as well. I'm a Pluralsight course author. So check out my courses there.
That's perfect. I'll make sure to put them all in the show notes here for everyone. So I just want to thank you again, Joe, for coming on. I think it was great to be able to talk about, cybersecurity and what's going on in that industry and how data analytics is being used. Feel free to reach out anytime, man. And thanks again for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was awesome.
All right, thanks.